Leonard Briggs. A quiet murmur spread through the courtroom, but no one moved until a tall, clean-shaven black man in a wrinkled gray suit stood from the last bench and made his way down the center aisle. He walked without urgency, calm, deliberate steps. No lawyer, no briefcase, no entourage, just him. Two uniformed officers in the back leaned toward each other. "That him?" one whispered. "Gotta be. Look at him. Probably one of those fake sovereign citizens, gonna tell the judge the laws don't apply to him." The other stifled a laugh. "You know how many times I've heard that garbage?" They chuckled, loud enough to turn a few heads. Leonard didn't flinch. His face remained still. Too still, almost unreadable, like he'd seen this exact moment before. The judge, an older white man with a thinning comb-over and a voice that sounded like it belonged on a local radio station, adjusted his glasses and looked down at the file in front of him. "Mr. Briggs," he said, flipping a page, "you're being charged with failure to comply during a lawful stop, is that correct?" Leonard responded, "That's what the report says. And you have no counsel present today?" "I don't need one." More chuckles from the back. The judge shot a glance toward the officers, but didn't say a word. The courtroom had just the right amount of tension, not enough to break the rhythm, but enough to make everyone aware of it. "All right," the judge continued, "this appears to be a minor violation. We'll keep this brief. Mr. Briggs, is there anything you'd like to say before we proceed?" Leonard took a step forward slowly. He reached into his coat. One of the officers in the back stood up slightly, hand twitching toward his holster. Leonard paused. Then he pulled out a slim laminated badge and placed it gently on the edge of the judge's bench. "I'm Leonard D. Briggs," he said, his tone steady, unraised. "Director of Internal Affairs, Federal Bureau of Investigation." The room went dead quiet. The judge didn't even blink at first. He just stared at the badge, his mouth opened slightly, then closed again. The officer who had half risen from his seat sat back down, jaw slack. His partner stared at Leonard like he'd just watched someone walk through a wall. "You're with the FBI?" the judge finally said. Leonard didn't move. "Internal Affairs. I oversee misconduct investigations across the southeastern region, including local departments that turn off body cams during traffic stops." You could hear the shuffle of papers, a cough, a pin drop. Then the judge cleared his throat and leaned back slowly in his chair. "Would you mind stepping to my chambers for a moment, Mr. Briggs?" Leonard shook his head. "I prefer everything stay on the record, full transparency." One of the officers in the back stood. We didn't know who he was," he mumbled, his voice barely audible. Leonard turned toward them, not aggressively, just looking, studying. "You didn't ask," he replied. But that silence didn't last long, because behind closed doors and open mouths, word travels fast, and this time it was headed straight for the top. It was just after 10:30 p.m. when Leonard pulled off Highway 45 near Biloxi, Mississippi. He'd been on the road all day, visiting small departments across the Gulf region, departments flagged for irregular reports, inconsistent use of force logs, and most recently, suspiciously frequent malfunctioning body cams. His rental was a silver Camry, basic, inconspicuous, nothing flashy. He'd chosen it for a reason. Leonard didn't advertise who he was. He preferred quiet observation. That night, he was on his way to a small motel on Bayou View Drive when red and blue lights lit up behind him. He sighed, slowed down, and pulled to the shoulder. In the rear view, two officers stepped out, both white, mid-30s. One with a shaved head and a flashlight already in hand. They didn't approach slowly. The bald one knocked hard on the driver's side window without waiting. "License and registration." Leonard rolled the window halfway. "What's the reason for the stop, officer?" "License registration," the cop repeated, sharper this time. "You didn't use your blinker at that last lane change." Leonard glanced at the dash cam in the mirror. "I'm pretty sure I did." "You got something to hide?" the second officer chimed in, appearing on the passenger side. "No," Leonard replied calmly, "but I'd like to know if this is a traffic stop or an interrogation." That didn't sit well. The bald officer leaned in. "You giving me attitude? Step out of the vehicle." "I haven't refused anything. I asked a question." Step out now." Leonard didn't budge. He handed over his license. Leonard Briggs. No FBI mention, just the ID of a man from Montgomery, Alabama. Clean, clear, still. They weren't satisfied. "Where are you headed?" the officer asked. "Can't." "You can't, or you won't?" Leonard looked him in the eye. Federal protocol. That was it. That single phrase triggered something in the cop. "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" he snapped. "You think you're above the law?" Leonard didn't answer. The second officer opened the passenger door. "Get out of the car." Leonard kept his voice low. "This stop isn't lawful anymore." But they didn't care. Both officers pulled him from the vehicle, hard. He didn't resist, but that didn't stop them from twisting his arm and forcing him to the ground, knees in his back. One officer cursed loudly, while the other called it in as refusal to comply. Leonard didn't shout. He didn't plead. He stared straight ahead at the gravel under his cheek, memorizing every word they said. What neither officer realized was that Leonard had turned on a small audio recorder in his coat pocket the moment the lights flashed. It was habit, the kind that came from knowing how these things often go for men who look like him, especially in the South. By the time they hauled him into the local station, they'd filled out a hasty report claiming he became verbally aggressive and refused to identify his destination. No mention of their own questions, no note of the unnecessary force. No camera footage either. When Leonard asked for the arresting officer's badge number, the response was a cold stare followed by a snide remark. "Don't worry, you'll have plenty of time to ask questions in court." He was placed in a holding cell overnight. No phone call, no chance to speak to a supervisor, just an echoing corridor, flickering light, and the smirk of the officer who thought he had the final word. But that wasn't the final word, not even close. Because the courtroom they'd drag him into wasn't just a place to press charges. It was where the real trial would begin. For them. The silence in the courtroom didn't linger, it thickened. After Leonard set his FBI credentials on the judge's bench, no one moved. The smirks from the back row were gone. The officer with the shaved head sat stiff, eyes darting between Leonard and the badge, like he'd seen a ghost. The judge cleared his throat, but his voice wasn't as steady as before. "Mr. Briggs, you're claiming to be with the FBI." Leonard didn't blink. "Not claiming, I am." He gestured toward the ID again. "You can verify the badge number with Director Travis McCall's office or the Office of Inspector General in D.C. One of the clerks, a woman named Darlene, with 30 years on the job and a sharp instinct for courtroom drama, stood up slowly. "Your Honor, would you like me to place that call?" "Please," the judge replied, almost too quickly. Leonard stepped back, giving them room. The entire courtroom was frozen in place, watching. Even a toddler in the gallery had stopped squirming. No one knew what would happen next. One of the officers, the one with the shaved head, whispered, "No way this guy's playing us." The other leaned closer. "That badge looks real. That ID looked real. This might be real." "Then we're screwed." Leonard heard every word. He didn't respond. His eyes were fixed on the judge, who now seemed a bit smaller behind that big bench. The clerk returned 5 minutes later, holding a small notepad and chewing the inside of her cheek. "Confirmed," she said, not even glancing at the officers. "He's FBI Internal Affairs, Southeastern Division. Been with them 27 years. Rank checks out." The room again went still. But this time it wasn't silence from mockery. It was embarrassment. From the judge's shifting eyes, from the officer's shallow breathing, from the prosecutor who suddenly had nothing to say. Leonard finally spoke. "I didn't come here to cause a scene," he said calmly. "I didn't even come here to file a complaint. I was on assignment, off record, traveling through departments under current review. I didn't volunteer my ID because I wasn't obligated to. I gave my license, remained calm, and followed the law." His voice didn't rise, but it filled the room. "I was assaulted, thrown to the ground, detained for hours without cause. My rights were ignored, but I documented every word, and I know exactly what procedures were violated." The judge leaned back in his chair, hands folded tightly. "Mr. Briggs, I'm not here for your apology," Leonard interrupted. "I'm here to request that the charges be dropped immediately and that both officers be placed on temporary administrative leave effective immediately." The prosecutor opened his mouth, but the judge raised his hand. "Granted." Both officers looked stunned. "You're suspending us just like that?" the bald one said, nearly shouting. The judge didn't answer. Leonard turned to face them directly. "This isn't about me," he said. "This is about every person you've treated like they didn't matter. Every citizen who didn't have a badge to pull out. I do. And I still ended up face down in the dirt." One of them stepped forward. "Look, we didn't know who you were, all right. If we'd known—" Leonard